All right, howdy guys, and welcome back to the Crown to Spur podcast. It is your favorite bougie vaquera, Kaelanne Quinonez, former Miss Rodeo USA, equine entrepreneur, and lover of all things Western. We are doing something kind of impromptu and special today because I really think that this needs to be talked about. I don't even have my microphone with me. You're going to be listening through the AirPod microphone. My setup is a little bit different, but I think this episode needs to go out before February 1st. And I don't think enough people are talking about it. I know that the community that I'm in and the people that I listen to and the leaders in the industry that I listen to are talking about it, but I have not found enough just like horse people talking about this topic, and it really needs to be talked about, in my opinion. And we're gonna drop this episode basically right before February. So how it's gonna be set up is I'm going to have my first episode drop, and then probably a few days later this episode will drop. So yes, it's a impromptu episode, but I really want to get it out, and I want to inform you guys so that you can know what to expect in the future. Today we're going to be talking about some topics that might be triggering. So I'm going to put just a little trigger warning. We are going to talk about animal ABU $E, and we're going to be talking about some really terrible things. So trigger warning, I guess. And I don't think I've ever done a trigger warning before, but here we go. All right, second video out, trigger warning. Let's do this. I'm going to be using a lot of notes today because I want to have specifics. You hear a lot of commentary channels and podcasters, and they're talking ethereal and at the 5,000-foot view, but I am bringing in specifics because I want y'all to know what you're getting into and what the government is going to get you into. So we're going to use specifics here. I'm going to reference some notes. We're going to pretend that this is a collegiate style paper. We're going to have sources cited so that if you want to go back and you want to check, you can actually go to the document and see where I pulled these exact details from. So without further ado, have y'all guessed what we are talking about today? We are talking about the Horse Protection Act. And how I want to structure this video is I want to tell you a little bit about the Horse Protection Act and why it was first enacted, and tell you about the new things that they're adding in 2025 that will actually go into effect February 1st, 2025. So probably just a few days from whenever y'all are watching this. And what that means for you, what that means for horse owners, what that means for y'all that are showing, that are out there on the road, that are rodeoing. Doesn't matter what discipline, this is a federal act, so it is literally going to affect every person who shows in the horse industry. So, pretty big deal, let's get into it. So, the Horse Protection Act was actually enacted in the 70s, 1970 actually, and it was to combat soring in Tennessee walking horses and gaited horses. So unfortunately, soring was, and it's still a problem, but it was a much bigger problem back in the 70s and probably even before that. Soring is one of those things where you don't want to do it, right? One, it's unethical, it's not nice to your ponies, and two, it's illegal, so don't. But what it is, if you're unfamiliar with soring, it's the act of taking an abrasive or harsh chemical or some kind of physical object to hurt your horse's hoof, cornet band, that area of the horse, to make an exaggerated gait, right? We all know the Tennessee walking horse is high stepping. Well, if you sore them, they're gonna pick up their feet higher, making that movement more exaggerated and prettier in the show ring. However, it's detrimental to the horse, obviously. So again, this soring can be caused by a chemical agent, or it can be caused by a physical agent, such as chains. Sometimes you'll see chains be put around horses' legs so that when they move, their legs move up and down, that chain also moves up and down, creating abrasion. And so it can be either chemical or physical. And it was very prevalent in the walking horse community and the gaited horse community in the 70s. And so the government said, hey, we need to step in and do something because y'all are not regulating yourselves. And so that is basically why it came about, right? It was based on animal welfare, and it was based on something that actually did need to change in the equine community. Okay, great, right? Like we're doing some good. The government is doing some good in the horse community. Now we come to 2025, and things are getting interesting. This was breed specific. This was for walking horses and gaited horse community and soaring, right? And that is where you see soaring. There's a lot of other issues in different disciplines, but really soaring is for the gaited horse community, sometimes in the Mexican dancing horses, the Tennessee walkers, but you don't typically see soaring in that aspect in other disciplines. Now, there are other terrible things that some people and trainers do to their horses in those disciplines that should also be outlawed and banned, right? And typically people can still get away with them, right? You can still drug your horses, you can still give your horse uppers, give your horse downers, you can still, and this was an example I heard about the Western pleasure discipline when I was growing up, that some of the trainers would tie, the bad trainers would tie horses' heads really, really tall to trees and leave them standing there, and then when it was ready to show, they would cut the horse down from the tree, and the horse's neck would be so sore that they couldn't lift it up, and so it gave that nice, Western pleasure downward slope. Awful things. So there was that example in the pleasure community that I heard from one of my trainers. She would see other trainers, or she'd heard of other trainers tie horses' heads super tall to the tree, their neck muscles would get worn out, then before they showed, they dropped their horses' heads and they couldn't pick them up, or vice versa. You tie your horse's head to the ground and then you just ride them around that way, and then the horse learns that that's where they're supposed to keep their head. Awful things, right? Barrel racers giving their horses snow, right, or something to kick it up a notch and go faster around the barrels. Anything. People are disgusting and creative when it comes to trying to get the upper hand on winning money and showing and prestige and buckles and ribbons and all of that stuff. But back to what I said earlier, soaring in that sense was really only seen in Tennessee walking horses, gaited horses, Mexican dancing horses, those communities. 2025, we are seeing the Horse Protection Act apply to all breeds, all shows, any horse gathering of over 100 horses. This Protection Act applies to you. A direct line pulled from the Horse Protection Act, from what I found online, is that they are extending this to all, and I'm looking over at my notes here, all horse breeds, shows, exhibitions, sales, auctions, and etc. So you got a 4-H show with over 100 horses, Horse Protection Act applies to you. You have a play day with over 100 horses, applies to you as well. But don't worry, if you have under 100 horses at your event, you are also not exempt from certain rules, and we'll get into that a little bit later. There are a lot of acronyms in this document, as all with legal and government documents. There's a lot of acronyms, right? So let's break them down because I had to look them up myself. So DQP, that is designated qualified person, very official sounding. HIO is Horse Industry Organization, and APHIS, APHIS, which is the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service. So if you hear me throw out some of these acronyms, that is what they mean in relation to the HPA, Horse Protection Act. So here we go. Let's use some of those acronyms. They are removing that, and again, if I'm looking off screen, I'm reading exactly from the Horse Protection Act here, okay? The proposed rule. Removing the requirement that DQPs be trained and licensed by HIOs, and removing the term DQPs from regulations. So they're just gonna take one acronym out and put another acronym in. That's how government works, okay? Instead, they propose that APHIS would screen and train qualified persons to be horse protection inspectors, or HPIs. APHIS would authorize these applicants, preferably, but not always, licensed veterinarians. So they are throwing one acronym out the window, saying, hey, we can actually appoint anybody we want to basically come in and make sure that you are running the show correctly. Yay, government overreach. We love that. So again, I'm reading through here, and it says, we're prohibiting any device, method, or practice that can mask the evidence of soaring, okay, whatever. Prohibiting all action devices, artificial extensions of toe pads, lengths, wedges, and lubricants of Tennessee walking horses and racking horses, except for approved therapeutic uses. So I guess all Tennessee walking horses, does that mean everybody is going to be either one, they're going to all be natural, or two, everybody's just going to go get therapeutic toe pads, right? They're going to tell their farrier, hey, they're outlawing this, so go put toe pads on, and now I have a doctor's note, right? Oh, my horse needs these toe pads. Oh, my horse needs these wedges. They're therapeutic, and now I can show them. We're gonna get one of two things, right? We go from one extreme to the other, instead of just making sure that we're not wearing those extensions or toe pads or what those wedges that were this big. That's ridiculous. Okay, but every horse discipline has its specific footwear, right? Cross-country horses have specific shoes. Cutters have specific shoes. Reiners have specific shoes. Tennessee walking horses, racking horses should have specific shoes. They shouldn't be this big. Yeah, but there should be some middle ground, because now we're gonna go, you're either barefoot or, which is what I'm getting from that, no artificial extensions. So we're going all natural, or you're going to go find a farrier that's going to give you that doctor's note so that you can wear those extensions and those toe pads. We get to the SCAR rule. It's going to more accurately describe visible dermatologic changes indicative of soring, and removing the requirement that such changes be bilateral. So left leg, right? Okay, we have some interesting things there. We'll circle back to that. Next bullet point is that if you have a event with over 100 horses, you have to have an APHIS representative, or HPI will choose whoever will come to your event. And if you're under 100 horses, there's not a guarantee that someone will be there, but you need a farrier on call. Interesting. Don't know why they decided to do that one, but a farrier needs to be on call, and they can decide if an APHIS representative needs to come into the show if you're under 100 horses. Along with that, there are some time constraints and some reporting that horse show managers, or just managers in general, have to be aware of. Now you have to provide notice within 30 days that you are having an event, and update 15 days after the event. So did anything happen? Did you have any drugged or sored horses? Blah, blah, blah. You have to keep records on hand for at least 90 days. Okay, like not terrible. Everything's digital now any days. So there's new reporting. I couldn't find exactly what this new reporting entailed, but new reporting, and you have to keep that on file for 90 days. Okay, I don't really like the new reporting part, but the 90 days, lots of things are digitized nowadays, so that shouldn't be terrible, or just keep the stack of papers for 90 days, but still, there is more reporting that managers have to do. And just, who are they going to give it to? Everything online is automated, especially if you're under 100 horses, you're just going to give this to the government ether, give this to the portal ether, and hope that it goes through. But if you don't, it's like one of those things. You want to make sure you do your taxes correctly, just in case you get audited, right? Because if you get that one time you get audited is the bad time, so you need to make sure you do it right every single time. And you have to do an inspection for every horse before they show. And they say on their site that this is to prevent horses and trainers that have been sored in the past or that are known for soring. That's to prevent them from competing in that show in the first place. So, begs the question of, is there a database of, is there a working database of trainers and horses that have been sored across the country, and is that going to be, one, readily available to these managers so that they can cross-reference, or two, is it just going to be on the side of the federal government, and we just send it in and hope that they catch every supposed abuser of the system? So I think that was a lot. That was almost 20 minutes of just talking about what the proposed plans are. So now, what does this mean for y'all? What does this mean for those of us that go to shows and rodeos? And this is kind of for everybody. This is the English community, the Western community. It's going to affect the rodeo community. They said parades are in here. So basically any horse gathering of 100 or more have rule set A, 100 or less rule set B. So what does this mean for y'all? Well, first, it means that your managers are going to have a lot more work to do. I don't know if you've ever been to a horse show. I know I have, and I've just gone to the smaller local ones, and I've been to rodeos, but check-in time is hectic sometimes, and it is not fun, and sometimes you have to wait in a long line, and it is a get in, get out, right? Here's my money, here's my Coggins, XYZ, I checked in as much as I could online, here you go, okay, here's your number, boop, next. Rodeo, it's did you register on the Next Gen app? Did you nominate through WCRA? Yes, what's your name? Okay, here, give me your money. Okay, next, like that kind of thing. So there's going to be more reporting. Again, I didn't see exactly what the reporting was, but then now that they're also going to add another step to that and say, hey, we're going to do an inspection on your horse. Now, do I think that education is important? Yes. Like, I am all about the education. I think education can be improved. Education can be improved all the time. Some rodeos and horse shows I've been to, it's like, yeah, I think that we could sit down and have a conversation about, hey, maybe we should do this instead, or try this way, or blah, 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 blah. That's the trainer in me. That's the educator in me. Do I think it should be regulated by the federal government? Absolutely not. One, time, right? You have more than 100 horses at an event. That's gonna be okay. Let's say every inspection takes 1 minute. That's being generous, I think, because if you're actually going to inspect the horse, if you give me 30 seconds, I'm gonna laugh in your face and be like, what kind of inspection was that, right? Like, let's say 1 minute, okay? And it's just very basic visual, like going up, nooks and crannies, very, very, very basic. That's 100 minutes. That is over 1 hour to check every single horse. So some shows you're gonna have everybody get there at the same time. Some shows might be staggered. So that your inspector is gonna have to be around all day. Okay, and I've been to rodeos that perf starts at 7. And slack runs till 2 a.m. I guess your inspector's gonna have to be there most of that time, right? So we're adding time to that process, okay? Next, we're going to have to come up with the money to pay this inspector, right? They're not gonna do it out of the goodness of their hearts or on volunteer hours. They're gonna want to get paid. Well, lots of rodeos and horse shows are nonprofit, not for profit. And money is coming from sponsors and donors and entry fees, and I'm assuming that these inspectors are not going to be cheap. So we're going to have to figure out money for that, which in turn is going to probably make your entry show fees, or probably going to make your entry fees go up. They can also detain your horse for 24 hours. So let's go to that SCAR rule real fast. They're taking away the fact that the SCAR needs to be bilateral. Okay. So that means let's just take a working ranch horse, for example. Working ranch horse, cowboys, right? Cowboys all day. Just goes out, catches cows, does his thing on the ranch. Wants to come in and do a local show, right? Let's try sorting, or let's try team penning or something, right? Somebody's granddaughter wants to go have fun on this horse. That horse got stuck in a barbed wire fence at some point in its life and has a gnarly scar on its lower leg. Not bilateral, okay? One leg. Does that constitute a soring because the horse stepped into barbed wire and now they're trying to go to a show? And how are they going to tell? Are we going to have a longer inspection process for determining the age of that scar and the healing process? And, well, is it, affecting performance? I've done a fair number of PPEs on horses, okay? That is one thing I don't mess around with. I don't care if I'm buying a $500 horse. I'm going to do a PPE on it because I want a comprehensive picture, right? I'd rather spend that money up front and figure out if there's something I'm going to have to pay for long term versus figure out later on that this horse needs injections, or this horse had laminitis in the past, or whatever. That's just me. That's how I do things. But those take time. So if we have a scar on a leg from a previous injury and we go to a show, is that then inspection going to take that much longer? Or are we going to do like what is going to determine if that horse was sored or not? And then if that horse is determined to be sored or lame, they can take your horse for 24 hours to do further testing. Who comes up with that bill? Are you handed that bill at the end of those 24 hours? And you're like, yeah, sorry, we thought your horse was sored or lame and it's not, so here you go, here's $5,000, pay us because we did a full extensive report on your horse. Like, who has to fork over that bill? I don't want to pay that. And that can go to, rodeo horses or cutting horses, any horses that work with cattle. Like, ropes get caught and things happen, right? So if that rope, your team roping or your calf roping, you throw your loop, your horse steps in your loop, oh no, we got into a little bit of a tussle, but my horse got burned from the rope. Does that count as soring? Because it was not intentional, but I did it to the horse? Something to think about. Because in reading this, it's all, again, very vague. They say that they're making it more specific, but they're still using tricky language, and it's a little vague. So, some things to think about, right? Your managers of horse shows are going to have added responsibility. Now, added responsibility within itself is not a terrible thing. We just want to make sure, I think, as an equestrian community, that these added responsibilities are clearly stated, especially because it is, again, a federal regulation that is going into place. It's not state, it's not even local, it's not per county, this is federal. So, should be fleshed out to know what we are doing and what to expect. Another thing to think about is the fees. So how much are these HPIs going to need to be compensated, right? And of course that is going to, again, fall on the shoulders of the person putting on the show or the auction or the event. Something to think about. And then how are those managers going to disperse that? Well, it's gonna come back to us, right? And, something that I loved about being Miss Rodeo USA and being within the horse community and riding horses since I was 4 years old was that, you could find a show that was accessible, right? I did not show AQHA growing up. I did not. It was a big time commitment. It was a big money commitment. And, my parents were like, no, you have school to focus on, right? And so I showed local shows. I myself could afford those local shows, and a lot of kids can still afford the local shows. I loved it. Gymkhana was something that I could do and spend $70 on and, go have fun with my pony for an afternoon and go through 7 different courses or 7 different events, and if I did well I could win a buckle at the end of the year, or if I did well that day I could win a little bit of cash back, right? Like it was something fun to do, and so I love the accessibility for it. And I remember we had a really big show actually during COVID, and everybody was wearing masks. California, we were social distancing as we could, 6 feet apart, and there were a lot of people there. Like, there were probably 100 horses there. It was a huge show. I'd never seen that kind of turnout at my local gymkhana. But again, it was accessible. Some people wanted to do that, right? And I love that about the horse community, because you can rodeo and you can find a rodeo. You don't have to rodeo PRCA if that's not your thing. You can go find local jackpots, or you can do local buckle series if you're doing ranch riding. I love doing local buckle series for ranch riding. It's just so fun, and you can go out and have fun with your horses, and you don't have to spend thousands of dollars if you don't want to. Now, obviously someday I'd like to get to that level, but if you just want to go and have fun, you can. And I am afraid that this is going to take away the accessibility to a sport that is already so elite. I don't know, I don't even want to say that, but it's so expensive. It's just an expensive sport, okay? Anything that has to do with a live animal is expensive. And I'm afraid that it's going to take that away. I also don't like the vagueness of the act. I think if you're going to put something out there that affects the entire equestrian community, because again, this is not breed specific, this is everybody, then you should have your I's dotted and T's crossed, right? I don't see that, and it just leaves a lot of questions for people that are trying to have community events. And the Western community, the horse community, is about community. It's about sharing the love of the horse with other people that love horses. And this is leaving a lot of murky waters for people who are already stretched thin to wade through, and I don't think that's fair. So, Horse Protection Act, what it might or might not mean to y'all. I would love to hear your guys' comments. I think I definitely gave a little bit of my opinion. There are some things in life that I will have a strong opinion on, and this is one of those things. But I would love to hear your opinions as well, so drop those in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. I will definitely make sure to put this one up on YouTube right away. But let me know in the comments how you feel about it. Let me know in the comments if you agree, if you disagree, if you want to see a pause on this, because as of right now, it is going to go into effect February 1st. So if you're having shows, you need to make sure that you are signing up with the USDA, right? Signing up and making sure that you're registering your show or your event or your auction. But if you want to see a pause on this so that legislators can take another look at it and maybe put in some more definitive wording or flesh some things out a little bit more, you can go to WesternJustice.info, and they have a petition on there. I don't know of any other organization out there that has a petition to kind of put a pause on this and put a stop to it, so that legislators can look it up again. But Western Justice has a petition, and I actually sat through a really good podcast with Dave via the Ag Women Connect. I'm part of the Ag Women Connect community, and sat through a really good podcast episode, kind of a live Q&A session where he talked about it and he broke it down a little bit as well. So I mean, it's really crazy. I wish more people were talking about it. So please share this episode with your friends, share it, get it out there, because the average Joe needs to know, right? That lawmakers are essentially overstepping, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. This video is facts and my opinion commentary, right? So if it's facts, I will let you know that I'm actually getting the information from the Horse Protection Act, from what I can find online, from legit sources. I'm not going to Wikipedia. I'm actually going to federalregister.gov to get my information. But then I'm going to put my commentary and put my opinions in there because it's my show and I want to. Thank you. So again, I hope this podcast was informational to you. I hope that you are gearing up for some changes in February. I know that is so soon, but again, anybody who's putting on shows, auctions, sales of 100 horses or more, and I don't even know if this applies to virtual auctions, right? Like, I know some of these auctions are huge online. Like, I don't know. There's so many things we don't know about this, and I've read the document. So I hope there's a little bit of clarity, or maybe a little bit of preparedness for maybe what is to come in February of 2025. And yeah, thank you all for listening so much to this episode of the Kaelanne Spur Podcast. Make sure that you're following me on Instagram as well. That's Bougie Vaquera, and Facebook, Kaelanne Quinonez. I'll have some information on there as well if you want it in shorter form content. But if you've listened and you've come to the end of the episode, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you guys in the next one.